What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. Today we are going to be talking about the great knife debate between fixed blades and folders. We're going to talk about the pros and cons and why you should carry one over the other depending upon who you are. I don't have any disclaimers for this. All I'm going to say is if you enjoy this video, please like and subscribe and send it off to a buddy who likes knives and who might be trying to decide which one he wants to carry. Send that over to them. Maybe they'll enjoy it. Maybe they'll get to join in to our crew here. With that, let's go ahead, get down on the workbench, and let's get into it. So like I said, we are talking about fixed blades versus folders. We're going to talk the pros and the cons and what situations would warrant carrying one over the other for the everyday guy. We'll just go ahead and start off with fixed blades. So let's get some of the ones that I bought for this out. So I picked up 3 blades to carry for this whole experiment for carrying a fixed blade over a folder that I did the past couple of months. They are all by a company by the name of Kaiser. This one down here at the bottom is called the Beaver. It is D2 steel. Nice and short handle, a little thick so it fills up your hand super nicely. This one looks very much so like a small, what I would call food prep knife with the shape of everything. It flows very nicely. It's got a good deep belly on it. But it's got a shorter blade, shorter handle. Little thick, but not too bad. The shortness of it makes up for how wide it is. This knife right here is called the Hare. It's got Nitro V steel. It's the biggest of the 3 knives, and it's too big for pocket carry, I think, at least for me. The handle is quite thick, and it's very long. So when this was in my pocket, almost the entire handle would stick out, and it was a lot coming out. So this is definitely more of a belt carry type of knife, which is perfectly fine. That's most likely what I'm going to transfer it over to, will be a belt carry knife that I'll either strap onto a bag or I'll throw it in my truck to be able to grab if I need a fixed blade. This is the knife that I carried 90% of the time, 95% of the time. It's the Drop Bear, made with AEBL steel. It's by far the thinnest out of all of them. Still has a relatively long handle, fills up my hand nicely, but it had a deeper pocket. It had a deeper pocket clip on it, so only about that much of the handle sticks out. You have this nice little pull tab on it as well. Comes with a set of toothpicks and tweezers as part of the handle, so just some extra little tools. And as you can see, it's the smallest out of the 3, even smaller than the Beaver, just by a smidge. So, now that we've kind of walked through what these knives are, if you'd like to purchase any of these or any of the other folders that I'm going to go over, those are going to be down in the description, at least as many of them as I can. Most likely going to be Amazon links because those are the easiest for me to do. Now, let's talk through the pros and the cons. Pros. Fixed blades are simple. There's not a whole lot to them. When you look at them, they are a sharpened chunk of steel with handles on them. That's the vast majority of fixed blades you're going to see. What you want to try to get is going to be a full tang, which means that the tang of the knife, which is the back portion where the handle is, goes all the way through the entire handle. This is going to create a very strong connection to the knife, and it's also going to make them weighted nicely, and it's going to be the strongest setup. That means that the entire handle has full support all the way down it, so you're not going to be able to just crack it in half or anything. Not that you can do that normally typically, but like if you drop this and it gets ran over or something, your handle's not going to be broken in half if you run over it. These are stronger tools, not just because of the full tang, but also because of the width. So if you look, I'm using this one because it's the thickest example. This guy's a little bit thinner. It's a little closer to what a folder is going to be, but a fixed blade can have a much thicker blade. So if you look at even one of my big knives like the Griptilian, the width of that blade, this guy's a lot thicker. So you get more, a lot more strength out of this than you would something else. Like there's not going to be nearly any give to this type of steel. That means that you can baton on these for breaking up kindling, or even, probably you could do logs about that big. It's probably an inch in diameter. You could baton your way through if you needed to. These are more of a tool than a folder is. A folder is kind of a quick, I need a blade to cut something. This is a full tool for chopping, food prep, and anything of that nature. If you want a bigger knife, something like this, or even if you want to go bigger, something along the lines of like this, if you're going to be out in the woods, where this is a very large knife, you can carry a big knife like this on your person and have all of the goodness of a really long blade and a very stout blade on your belt. This guy goes on your belt. Now you have a nice big knife on you. Quick note about this guy. This is the first real big knife that I ever got. I carried this in the woods as a kid for 5 or 6 years. This was on my belt every day. I used the crap out of this thing, and the blade is nice and chipped. You can see some little chips in it from where I was smacking it on stuff. It's not the sharpest thing in the world, but it really got the job done, and I thoroughly enjoyed having this knife. Just as a complete side note, nothing important to the video other than saying you can have, this big of a knife on your belt if you wanted. On the other side of it, you can do, which I don't have an option because I don't really like to carry knives this way, but you can have a neck knife option where it's going to be a lot smaller and very, very concealed, where it's under your clothes and you can get to it if you need it for whatever. So you can go on both ends of the spectrum, where you can have something really big or something really small and very concealable. But standardly, you're going to have something more along this size, and it's going to be less concealable than a folder. And that moves kind of into the cons of them, is that typically you're going to have a much larger footprint. If you look at even this guy with how small this blade is, and then you look at something like we'll use the Griptilian again, with how big that is. This knife is huge. It's much more comparable to the hair, but this one is way too big for me to pocket carry. This is in my pocket all the time. Something like this, or even the Spyderco Para 3, is even a little bit bigger than this and very comparable to the hair. And this is my go-to everyday knife for a folder. The other piece of this is, if you work in an environment where you're not using a knife every day, like if you don't work outdoors, fixed blades tend to make people a little more nervous than a folder does. Folders are seen much more as a tool. They're way more common. So these kind of, I don't know, they just make people a little more nervous, which unfortunately is something that you should think about for your job and everything along those lines. Like if you work in an office and everything, having one of these in your pocket can be a little odd. It just entirely depends upon where you work. I work as an engineer in my daytime job, so I carried this for a little while, and it's not super weird for me because I used it a lot for cutting things, for cutting tubing, cutting rubber, anything of that type of sort. So for me, it worked out for me to be able to have it. However, for a lot of people, it's just not going to be a great option to have in an office space. If you work outdoors, it's great. You can go ahead and carry this all you want. It's not going to be weird because you're in an outdoor setting where it is understood you will probably have a knife when you're working. So there is part of that. The other piece of this is that you cannot just carry like these as they sit right here. You can't just throw this in your pocket. You do need some kind of a sheath for them. So that is just an extra piece that you need for them, which includes pocket clips. And as you'll see, I don't have pocket clips on these two because I was trying to use this clip, because it's the clip that worked the best for pocket carrying. It fit well on this one. It did not fit well on this guy, unfortunately. I was trying to get a Unity clip for this. I still want to. I just have not been able to get my hands on one. When I ordered one, it didn't show up. Not their fault. It just got lost in shipping. So that's going to do it for folders for the moment. Let's go ahead and talk folding knives. All right. So now we're talking folders. If you want to get any, if you like any of the knives that you see right here, I'll link some of these down in the description, and then I'll link some other options for some folders that I think are really good as well, or at least as many of them as I can that I can find. Like this one, I don't actually know if they make this knife anymore. I've had it for forever. I think it's called the Swindle, but I don't know if they still make this one. I'll try to find it if I can. But that's my quick disclaimer about these. So let's talk the pros. One really big pro is that you can get a much longer, bigger blade in a much smaller package. This Griptilian fits in my hand, only sticks out just a little bit, but the blade on it is huge. Just like we went and looked at before, something like the hair. This blade is technically longer than it. It's not as wide, but it's longer than it, and really the handle is bigger. So there's more knife here than there is with this guy, but it's in a much, much smaller package when it's all folded up. These are much easier to conceal. You can get deep carry pocket clips like this, and the knife almost completely disappears into your pocket, so it's out of the way. You don't have to worry about it getting all scraped up or anything like that. And there's some better options if you're in a workplace that you have to dress a lot nicer for. You know, something even like this going into kind of dressier pants or khakis is a little much, but you can put something like the Swindle into your pocket. It's very thin, very what we would call elegant. Also, I believe this is the 904 by Benchmade. This is the first really nice knife that I got, but it's real thin, hides in the pocket super well, and it just goes kind of more with that style a little bit more. So that's a good option if you're going to be kind of dressed a little bit nicer. Folders will allow you to be able to still have your knife on you, but not have it kind of be in the way of everything. Another piece for folders is that the mechanisms on them are just, they're honestly kind of cool. If you don't nerd out about that type of thing, that's fine. That's not going to be a point that's relevant to you. But for me, like I said, I'm an engineer in my day-to-day life, so mechanisms are something that's very interesting, the locking mechanism. As you can probably tell by the fact that 3 out of the 5 knives that I picked have the, well, this one's not called the Axis lock because this is by Kershaw, but the Benchmade Axis lock. I always thought this was a really cool, very firm locking mechanism, and it was always super fun to play with. So I think the mechanisms are really cool, especially even the Spyderco, I don't remember what they call this one, but it's the back pressure lock back here to fold in. I always thought that that one was pretty neat as well. So that's a little extra piece to this. The cons of folders is that while the mechanisms are cool, they are going to be more complicated. So if you are working in a dirty environment, or if you're working where there's going to be dust, debris, and everything like that, they can get gummed up a lot easier. Or if you're going to use it for like food prep for like apples and everything, you're going to get more gunk on the knife, and you will probably have to clean them. You have to do some maintenance on folders if you want them to stay nice for a long time. But really, you should be taking them apart, cleaning them, re-oiling them at least like once a year if you carry it in your pocket every single day. If you're cycling your knives through a lot, then you don't necessarily have to do that as often. You can get away with like once a year for like your most carried knife, or like once every 2 years. The other piece is that because there is that mechanism in them, there is technically more points of failure. Now, there's plenty of tests out there that show that you're not going to be able to break this locking mechanism. I've seen a lot of those out there, but there is still important to talk about the fact that, you do have a failure point here, technically. So if something happens to this, or it doesn't lock all the way, or something like that, now your knife is not actually safe. It's just going to be able to flop around. With that, these are going to be lighter than a folder, or I'm sorry, these are going to be lighter than a fixed blade because they are not full tang. Like there's a huge chunk of metal back here. There's not a whole lot going on back in here. The con with that means that this handle is not near as strong. I've seen many pictures of people who have accidentally dropped a griptilian in particular and accidentally run it over with their car, and then the grip is completely destroyed. There's nothing left because this is just plastic. So it's super light, which is nice, but makes it so that it's not going to be the most robust thing if something does happen to happen. If something does happen to it. And that's the big pros and cons of folders. Now, there's one more piece that I want to talk about when it comes to knives. And that is that if you look back on the channel, I do make knives. That's one of the things that I do for fun. I don't really do it for videos anymore because that extra piece just took way too long. I just want to be able to go out and work on them, not have to worry about filming, so I don't film them as often anymore. We might have some here or there, but I digress. When it comes to carrying a knife, a fixed blade is something that you can definitely make super easily. Like we said, they're very simple. They are simply a hardened piece of steel with a handle, and then that's really it. You can change the shape and everything. You could change what kind of bevel you're going to put onto it. You could change your handle material, but at the end of the day, it is a chunk of steel that is sharpened with handles. So if you want to, you could make a knife that you carry every single day. This is more of a camp knife, which is why I don't carry it, and I have not made a sheath that is really the right size for it. It kind of lives in this one, which I throw on my belt every once in a while, but this sheath is too big for this knife. But that's not super important. This is a knife that I'll throw on my belt for if I'm going outdoors. I'll carry it because of how big this handle is. I made it so it fits really nicely in my hand. But this is not one that I would carry every day, to my job. I'm not going to carry this one. But that to be said, you could make yourself an everyday carry knife, or even just a knife for the woods, out of a fixed blade much easier than you could a folder. This right here is one of my 2 attempts that I made at making a folder. This is a lot simpler of a folder than something like, any of these. These are a lot more complicated. This is probably as simple as you can get, but even still, there was a lot more thought process that went through what I was doing here than what I was doing here. This was a general sketch. I knew the length that I wanted. I knew how big I wanted my handle to be, the rough shape of it. We rough forged it, ground it to what I wanted it to be, put the handles on, shaped those, and then we were done. This took me a lot more sketching to figure out how to get everything to flow nicely. When you look at this, we're going to go ahead and just address the fact that the tip is broken. I made this out of a file. I didn't heat treat it properly, and the tip was cracked off of it when I was doing some brief testing with it to see how well it was going to hold up. So now that we've talked about that, let's get to the rest of it. If you look down in here, there's 2 pivot points, or there's 2 pins right here. So there's a pivot point here that goes through this that I had to balance kind of the squeeze of everything by shaving down this spacer in the back to get the right tension on it so that it would stay closed and not flip open, but you could still open it with one hand and it would kind of stay open without flopping back and forth. And when you put your hand on it to be using it, that's really what locks it in. You gripping over top of that tab is what holds the whole thing open. This other piece, this other pin that goes through here is your pivot stop. So when this opens all the way up, your pivot bottoms out on that pin, and that's what stops it. And when you go closed, the same thing, it bottoms out on the blade as well as the blade bottoming out here. So there's kind of 2 stopping points for that. But all that math took a lot more sketching, a lot more hand filing,
to get that exactly correct. So this is a super fun thing to do, but it's significantly harder, a lot more time consuming, and it's not as functional, I don't think, as something like this is. This was more of a fun thing that I wanted to try, but I would not carry this exact little knife, at least today, I would not. All that to be said, that the folder you could do, it just takes a little bit extra than something like this. But you could 100% make a fixed, you could 100% make a folder, which would be super fun to do, and then you could carry a piece of really truly art that you made yourself, which is kind of cool. Now that we're through the pros and cons of everything, let's just break it down. Who should carry what type of knife? And to be 100% honest with you, it's entirely up to you what you want to carry. If it's going to fit into your situation, carry whatever you want. It's your everyday carry. That's why it's a personal thing. But my opinion, if you are going to be in a profession where you're going to be outdoors and doing a lot of stuff with your hands where you're going to be using a knife a lot more often, I would get a fixed blade. Get something that is a tool that is going to hold up super well, that is going to be rugged, and is going to do the job. You can do that with a folder. However, I think that a fixed blade is a much better option. If you are going to be using a knife every once in a while, if you're going to be using it for just some food prep maybe, and it's not a super common occurrence, use a folder. They are smaller, more compact, more out of the way in your pocket, and it's just going to be a little bit simpler for you to be able to use. And with that, this has been our discussion on fixed blades versus folding knives. When it comes down to it, it's entirely up to you. Kind of depends upon your state and what your situation is, whether or not you should carry a fixed blade or a folder. Hope you guys found this helpful, making kind of a decision, maybe getting some ideas for some knives to carry. Do me a favor, go down into the comments and tell me what knife you guys carry, whether it's a folder, a fixed blade, make, model, tell me what it is, tell me how long you've been carrying it. I'm really curious because I've also not bought, other than the fixed blades that I've bought recently, kind of to try them out, I've not really bought a knife in a really long time because I made them for a while. I kind of got out of that for a little bit. Life just kind of got busy, and I haven't bought a folder in forever, so I'm kind of itching to buy a new one and try one out. So leave what you guys carry down in the comments of what I should try out. And remember, best way to support the channel, go buy some merch. We've got shirts in the store, link down below. And with that, I just want to thank you guys for watching this video. Please like, subscribe, send this to a buddy who is into knives or just into everyday carry gear and might enjoy this. It'll help the channel out. And remember, train hard, stay safe. I'll see you guys in the next episode. Bye. Man, I am struggling to open this thing. There we go. Got it.